I just got out of the theaters from seeing the highly anticipated horror film, The Backrooms, on the big screen, and we have a lot to discuss when it comes to this movie, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the movie review. Let's go. Backrooms is a psychological horror film with thriller and sci-fi elements directed by Kane Parsons, and inside of this film we see Clark, a struggling furniture store owner. After discovering a mysterious portal in his basement, he accesses the Backrooms, an endless, disorienting labyrinth of yellow walls. When Clark disappears, his therapist, Dr. Mary Klein, ventures into the alternate dimension to rescue him. So as you guys probably know, this film was created by someone by the name of Kane Parsons, who goes by Kane Pixels online. He created the idea of the Backrooms and came up through short film content on YouTube. He has now transitioned into making feature films, and this is his directorial debut. So, you know, this is a very big moment, and this film has a ton of hype going into it. Well, did it live up to all of that hype? Well, that's exactly what we're going to discuss inside of this video, because I see that the critics love it, and I see that the audience is a bit divided on it, quite honestly. So let's go ahead and jump into my movie review for Backrooms, starting with my positives for the Backrooms movie. And for my first positive with this movie, I want to highlight the main actor here, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who does a fantastic job as the lead Clark inside of this film. Now, Clark is this furniture store owner who is struggling to get his business off the ground and get it running. He doesn't have customers coming into his store. In fact, it's quite vacant a majority of the time. And when we meet Clark inside of this film, he seems to be down on his luck. He got kicked out of his house by his wife. He's going through marriage issues. He's struggling with a drinking problem. We see him going to therapy, trying to mend all of these situations in his life, but nothing seems to be working. And it is at this moment in his life that he discovers the Backrooms through the basement inside of his furniture store, which eventually leads him into this other dimension where we get to fully see the idea of the Backrooms fleshed out inside of this film, from, you know, creepypastas on the internet, short films on the internet, to now a feature-length film with a proper $10 million budget behind it, so that we can fully express all of these ideas. And just getting to see Clark go through the motions here of discovering this seemingly endless liminal space that comes across as more of a maze or a labyrinth, and him just slowly descend into madness throughout the duration of this film. I loved it. Okay, it was very inspired to me from like The Shining. I kind of felt like this director was pulling on a lot of different inspirations from classic horror films, and The Shining is one that I hold near and dear to my heart, and one that I've seen a lot of similarities to inside of this film, with the main character very similar to Jack Nicholson inside of The Shining, where we watch Jack Torrance slowly descend into madness. That is sort of what you get here with Clark, and I thoroughly enjoyed that entire psychological journey with this character, getting to know how his mind ticks, what makes him move, and watching that classic saying of curiosity killed the cat play out throughout the duration of this film. Okay, I loved the character of Clark, and I think this lead actor did a fantastic job at holding up this movie. Now let's go ahead and highlight the second lead inside of this film, and that would be Renata Rienz, who plays the character of Mary. She is Clark's therapist inside of this film. She has a huge role in herself, a lot of camera time. They take time to flesh out this character, her backstory, a bit of her childhood, and what makes her tick too, what exactly brought her to the therapist field of profession. And getting to see this character get a big shine here too, kind of as a unique contrast to Clark, almost his exact opposite, where she's supposed to represent the sane and the sound mind, and Clark is supposed to represent the exact opposite of that. And witnessing this sane, logical person also having to deal with the fact that she just discovered the unexplainable, I thought that was a magnificent way to explore the Backrooms through the lenses of our different characters here. Okay, I think they both did a fantastic job here and really sold this movie for me. Now let's go ahead and talk about other positives that I have with this film, and that would be the set design. All right, now we spoke about it a bit, but the way that they designed the Backrooms, the level of accuracy to that internet lore, I thought it was fantastic. The way they explain it and present it to the audience, the way how when you're going throughout the Backrooms with our main characters, it feels like you are also getting lost in this space, trying to keep track of exactly where the characters are at each and every point in time. And you begin to realize, oh, this is a place that you could truly get lost in. And if you do, if you cannot find your way back, you will truly go mad inside of a labyrinth like this. And I thought it was great. I thought they executed on the idea, right? I thought they delivered on the title of this film, that being the Backrooms, and you get to see that idea fully flushed out as we stated previously. And I also feel like they even added on to the Backrooms lore, stuff that I didn't know, stuff that I wasn't familiar with, and I found it very fun getting to explore all of these different ideas. Getting to see the Backrooms fully come to life and not just be, you know, something generated on your computer screen, but an actual real location that they built with a proper budget. I thought that was amazing. I loved seeing all of this on display. Now let's go ahead and move on to other positives that I have with this film, and that is the psychological nature and psychological element to this movie, because that is my favorite film genre of all time, that being psychological thriller, which is why I previously mentioned The Shining. So getting to see all of those elements implemented inside of this film, also playing with the psychology of our characters, not approaching this film like a typical horror movie, but more so one that wants to let you think and ponder and lets things play out for the audience. It's a very patient film. It takes its time, and I think some people are going to have a problem with that, quite honestly, but for me it worked. Okay, I would compare it to something like a Midsommar, where the first second act of the film are very slow and methodical and played out, but that third act is where all of the craziness ensues. This film is kind of similar to that, okay? It's a slow burn type of movie. You have to take your time with it. You have to have patience. Going in to see this film directly after seeing Obsession, it was a big contrast to the movie Obsession. I know a lot of you guys are going to feel that way too if you came out of just seeing Obsession, right? It's the box office hit right now, into watching the Backrooms expecting a similar experience. I want to tell you, please do not do that, because you are not going to like this movie if you go in expecting it to be that type of film. All right, it's completely separate, completely different, a completely different approach to filmmaking and to the way that they want to present this story to the audience. Now, I love that this is a mind-bending movie. It plays with your perception of reality and kind of questions reality as a whole. And another thing that I want to highlight here, okay, that's the found footage element to this movie, because we haven't spoken about it yet, and it's a very big part of this film. Eventually Clark ends up bringing a camera into the Backrooms, and that is sort of when you get this found footage experience here, very similar to something like the Blair Witch Project, right? I would say this film was very inspired by that. And so getting that camera point of view, that first person perspective as you're going throughout the Backrooms with your main character, but again, you're not seeing them on screen. It's almost like you're walking through the Backrooms yourself, getting lost in this labyrinth. And I really think they used the found footage element very well. I think it added to the creepiness and the unsettlingness of this movie. And really, this film does a great job at building that suspense just slightly but constantly and gradually as you watch throughout the film, but also that sense of wonder, right? I want to draw back to the curiosity killed the cat. That's almost the audience also, because you also want to explore this space. You want to know what else is out there. Is there anything lurking around each and every corner? And it's just a fascinating concept. That was very fun to explore. They even do a trick that Stanley Kubrick himself uses inside of The Shining, and that is when you return to what is supposed to be a familiar area, things have moved around a bit, okay? The furniture is not exactly the same, which the furniture is just scattered everywhere inside the Backrooms. Things are just slightly different than the first time you've seen them, and that way the director can also psychologically impact and affect the audience also in a way that is interesting. Okay, now let's go ahead and discuss my final positive with the Backrooms movie, and that would be the score and the sound design, because it really adds to the creep factor here in a major way. As soon as you make your way into the Backrooms, right, this is supposed to represent like an office space. So you hear those lights above your head, right, those buzzing lights, and you know exactly the ones I'm talking about. You can hear the electricity slightly going through them, the buzz that they get off. But in the dead silence of what's supposed to be the Backrooms for a good portion of this film, you hear that buzz just cutting through the silence, making and adding to that uncomfortable feel that you get throughout this movie, while also the score on top of it just adds to the creep factor overall. So I did want to point those out. I did want to highlight that. Now let's go ahead and move into my negatives for the Backrooms film. And guys, when it comes to the negatives of this movie, the first thing I would have to state is the pace. Okay, this movie, like I said, it's slow. It's methodical, it takes its time, it's patient, it wants things to slowly play out, but because of that, it does struggle and drag at moments, especially in the second half of this film, and I could already tell a huge portion of the audience that struggles with attention span is going to have a big problem when it comes to this film. Okay, they're going to find a lot of it boring. Did I find it boring? Not particularly. I thought it was interesting. I was intrigued. I was on for the ride. I wanted to see what the film had in store for us, but it definitely takes its time to play out, and that's going to turn off a lot of audience members, and I can hear the word boring already out there on the internet, people saying it. And so this is me explaining to you why that is, why you may be hearing that about this movie. Now let's move on to my second negative when it comes to this film, and that's that this movie is not scary at all. Quite honestly, I was not in fear at all while watching this film. You know, now it does get under your skin a little, right? It impacts you psychologically. It makes you think. It does all of these good things. But in terms of fear, in terms of horror, in terms of this being a horror film and it delivering on the promise of a horror film, I do think it fails on that aspect, right? I do not think the majority of the audience is going to be scared of this. I think, you know, people just getting into horror films will be able to watch this film and just appreciate it as a film while it not shocking them to their core too much. Quite honestly, this was not a scary experience. In fact, I thought it was quite funny once we finally got to the madness and the craziness, but maybe that's just my twisted brain. Okay, I really don't know, but I did want to highlight that, and I did want to talk about that negative with this film, but those would be my only negatives with the film, okay? I liked it a lot, so let's go ahead and move into my overall review for the Backrooms movie. Look, guys, this is a brand new experience in a way. You could feel a lot of the different inspirations through classic cinema, through classic films that clearly inspired Kane Parsons to create and implement a lot of these different tactics into his Backrooms movie. I'm glad that he finally got this opportunity to make a debut film, to fully explore this idea that he's explored in the past with short films of the Backroom. Now we're getting this full feature-length film. I think they delivered on the promise of the Backrooms. I think if you're a fan of the lore of the Backrooms, right, and you went in expecting a Backrooms movie, you definitely get that here. They approached it in an appropriate way, I think, and I love the main characters here. Okay, Clark and Mary, I loved exploring these characters. I loved their psychology. I loved how different they were from each other, yet how they still have this relationship to each other, this doctor to patient relationship, and she is constantly trying to help him and heal him and mend his life throughout this film. I found that fascinating, this sense of exploration of a seemingly endless space that mazes and routes around in ways that you wouldn't expect, different objects popping in, popping out, terrifying things potentially lurking around the corner, footsteps coming, right? Different things like that that play with the mind. I think it did all of those elements well. By the time I was done watching this film, I feel like I understood what the director was going for, and it worked for me on a lot of different levels here. I see the critics are loving it. I see the audience is a bit divided. I think I properly explained why in the negative section as to why that is, and gave you an overall point of view of what you can expect to see out of this movie. And before we drop the rating for the film, I must state it once again. If you are watching this film after watching Obsession, go in with a blank slate. Do not compare these films. It's a completely different experience and take on the genre. And with that being said, guys, if I had to rate Kane Parsons' Backrooms movie, I would go ahead and give this film a 8 out of 10. It gets the 8 out of 10. I think this is a very solid theatrical experience. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, and I would recommend that you support this film at the box office if this idea of the Backrooms seems interesting to you in any sort of way. Okay, so those are my thoughts on this film, guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this film down in the comment section down below. If you don't know what we do here on Dip Got Into, we do film, TV, and pop culture based content. So if you're interested in this type of content, in the right place, hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.